Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon solo video. Today we're using the new middle Ishmael, who's pretty good. I do like her. More so than most other identities because, you know, the whole Envy Resonance team is definitely my favorite team archetype, and it's definitely because, yeah, my queen is a part of that, so any new identity that fits into that category is instantly a good one in my opinion. Unless it's a Don Quixote identity, in which case they're the worst identity in the game, but that's beside the point. Anyways, as for this one in particular, she's pretty average when it comes to a middle identity, I'd say. Well, in terms of how she actually plays into the Envy Resonance team, I'd say she's pretty average. Because it's like, she does exactly the same thing as both, you know, middle Don Quixote and middle Sinclair, where if you get a 6 Envy Absolute Resonance, her counter skill becomes her skill 3. Which automatically makes her, like, a really good DPS unit, because, like, if you're using her in a full Envy team, that basically means you can spam your skill 3 every single turn. Which, obviously, with the skill 3 being the strongest skill in any identity's kit, being able to use it every turn is something that's very good. She does also play slightly similarly to specifically middle Sinclair, in that when she takes damage, or when anyone takes damage, she also builds up a secondary status effect of her own middle grudge, which is different to Sinclair's status effect, which I can't quite remember what it's called. Let me just check real fast. Vendetta Mark. It's similar to his Vendetta Mark. The only difference is instead of it stacking up on the enemy, it stacks up on herself. And she consumes this whenever she uses her skill 3 to build up her middle-styled augment tattoos. Another status effect that just gives her more damage and base power, basically. It also gives extra effects as well, like bleed count on her skill 1 and paralyze and bind on her skill 2, which is pretty good utility, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah.
방금 공격. 다음에 다른 개체에게도 다시 해봐줄래? 영상을 남기면 다른 직원에게도 도움이 될지도 몰라.
이거 건강하지?
자, 앞당 배치 성공! 오늘도 정말 멋진 활약이었어.
We head into Hell's Chicken for the next floor, where we find the Manor-shaped music box, Tango Marinade, Hot and Juicy Drumstick, Fiery Down, 4-Leaf Clover, and the Emerald Elytra, before making it to the boss against Papa Bongi. So one of the most, like, things about her that makes her, in my opinion, the best middle identity of the 4 of them is actually the fact that she's the only one that's actually capable of inflicting bleed count at all. So it's like, up until this point, right, the middle, they are technically speaking bleed identities, but they don't actually have the capability of building a bleed stack at all. So, yeah, it's like middle Ishmael, she doesn't have enough bleed count to be able to fully support it on her own, so you do need some sort of outside help in order to actually keep a bleed stack alive, but like, at least she has some, you know? Which definitely helps out, like, a lot with the middle team. And that brings me to her second status effect of Burn, which is unique because she only has Burn because she has unique thermal weapons, so it's kind of her secondary status effect, and that's doubly so when you consider the fact that, like, if you're actually using her in a Burn team, she's not the greatest, honestly. And it's because how she is actually capable of inflicting burn, which there's not enough time to talk about that in this fight, so I'll save that thought for the next one.
잘라놓고 웃겨놨지만 저것들은 언젠가 다시 재생하겠지.
We head into the crawling abyss for the next floor, where we find the contaminated needle and thread, the rusty commemorative coin, temporal brittle, ruptured blood sac, and imposed weight, before making it to the boss against the dream-devouring silt current.
승객들, 뭔가 기분 좋은 일이라도 있었던 거야?
재밌겠는데?
So as I was saying about like Ishmael and her burn application, it's like it's not the greatest, honestly, because like in order for her to actually apply any burn whatsoever, she needs to activate her thermal weapons. And in order to do that, she needs to have at least 3 absolute envy resonance in a single turn, which is not the easiest thing to do in a burn team. Like, for burn identities, there are a couple that have an envy skill, right? Like, off the top of my head, it's like you have Liu Yisong and Yu Heathcliff, right? So it's not impossible for her to get an envy absolute resonance in a burn team if you're using the right identities, but it's also not the easiest thing either, because you do need an absolute resonance, which means you need to get lucky and not only have like those 3 identities have their envy skills, but you also need them to be, they need to roll similar speeds in the actual turn to be able to get a resonance in the first place. So at the very least, it's like it doesn't matter that much because burn is so easy to stack up that like having one identity that doesn't do it at all very well, it's perfectly manageable. So it's a problem, but not too much of a problem, if you know what I mean.
오늘도 정말 멋진 활약이었어.
We head into Hatred and Despair for the next floor, where we find the Cetacean Heart, the Knight's Blessing, Greycoat, Phlebotomy Pack, and Crushed Memory, before making it to the boss against the Knight of Despair.
파도가 밀려올 것만 같은 그런 냄새가 나요. 재밌겠는데?
There's nothing else to really talk about with this identity, to be honest. It's like, she has bleed count, her burn is kind of awkward in a burn team, and she's a pretty typical middle identity, and that about sums her up. Hi, Queenie.
지금 이곳에 등장!
자, 맞서보죠. 재밌겠는데?
So it's like, yeah, that about sums her up. Pretty typical middle identity with a bit of burn and a bit of bleed. More bleed than most others, which makes her the best middle identity, but yeah, I've already said that, so.
정의의 이름으로!
72조 사망 기행 사연.
As for this actual run itself, it's like,
때까지 참아줘야
the Knight of Despair, actually a kind of difficult fight for this identity. At least it would be if we didn't get her blessing like earlier, because we are fatal to pierce damage without that, and with the Knight mostly doing pierce damage, it's like it would hurt a lot if we didn't pick that up earlier. So definitely got lucky there.
이거 건강 맞지?
And it's like another thing about like honestly middle identities in general, or I should say just any identity that's pretty reliant on their counter skill to be good, is that like their biggest weakness is actually sinking.
이거 건강 맞지?
And that's purely because, like, you know, if you're using your defense skill, you can't clash, and if you can't clash, you can't gain sanity. So it's like sinking does even more than it already does by lowering your sanity even more than it should normally. So yeah, if you don't have some way to subsidize the sanity reduction of, you know, fighting a sinking based boss,
한결 수월해진 것 같아.
using the middle is not the greatest idea, I'd say.
사랑보다 붉은 달.
But it's like they do have, you know, middle Merceau, who helps out a little bit with giving a total of 12 sanity healing, I think it is, across like 2 characters. So it's like he's pretty good. He's one of the best sanity healers in the game, honestly. But you could also like substitute it with other other sources of sanity healing, like Ringy Song or some other characters like that, so there are ways to mitigate the sanity reduction of sinking damage, so it's not that bad. But as for the purposes of this fight, it's like, it doesn't do much, to be honest. Like, the whole sanity thing only matters if you can't clash, and like, if you're doing a solo, you can't always clash, so it might not be the best thing, but it is something. And also, yeah, Ishmael does have a little bit of sanity healing in her skill 1 as well, so it's like, even if you aren't clashing at all, she can still regain sanity that way.
있잖아. 사실 마법 소녀들은 항상 유령난에 시달리거든. 혹시 우리를 도와서... 아니야. 그건 선택의 순간이 필요하니까. 내가 정할 순 없겠네. 아쉽다.
이거 중간 맞지? 야! 글쎄! 바이올렛 브레이크 슬램! 이거 중간 맞지? 야! 글쎄! 바이올렛 브레이크 슬램! 이거 중간 맞지? 야! 글쎄! 바이올렛 브레이크 슬램! 되겠냐고요. 아무튼 놀라운 한방이네요.
우리 아들 막내 증오스러운 존재들에게 나와 그대의 힘을 합쳐 위대한 사랑의 힘을 보여줄 것을!
재밌겠는데?
아카나 레이! 당신 그래도 자! 악당 배치 성공! 오늘도 정말 멋진 활약이었어!
We head into Nocturnal Sweeping for the next floor, where we find the Enhancement Tattoos, an extra skill 3, and Chains of Loyalty, before making it to the boss against the Sweepers. It's not a middle run if you aren't fighting the Sweepers, because yeah, this is the floor where you get the middle inspired ego gifts.
엄청난 공격이었어.
Of course, just like the Knight of Despair, it's like the Sweepers would actually be kind of difficult if not for the Knight's Blessing. Purely because they just do a lot of pierce damage.
여러분들 기분이 좋아 보이시네요.
But yeah, without... Honestly, even without the Knight's Blessing, it's like they're not too bad, honestly. I mean, obviously taking them this early is kind of bad because it's like the Sweepers get substantially easier the later you take them, considering just how little health they have. So it's like the second you get Lunar Memory, the Sweepers just instantly die.
그 인간도 이건 인정할걸?
So taking them this early is actually not the best thing in the world, but it's like, you gotta take them this early to get the middle ego gifts as quickly as possible. Because like, why are you using a middle identity if you're not gonna use the middle unique ego gifts, right? But yeah, even though they do manage to stagger us, it's like the Manor-shaped music box makes it so that we can survive very easily. And yeah, the rest of the Sweepers just aren't that difficult. It really is just the first couple of turns against the Sweepers that's the problem, because the second you can start clashing against them, it's like their entire gimmick just falls apart instantly, basically. They just don't have enough damage to do anything at that point. Because you can just you can effectively one-shot them whenever you want. Unless they have persistence, but like at that point you just break their coins so they just don't do any damage. So yeah, sweepers, only really a threat if you're fatal to them and take them really early on, otherwise. Quite a pushover. Nothing else to really say about them.
조금만 더 힘내자.
재밌겠는데? 되겠냐고요. 이거 공감했지? 발레 브레이크 슬램.
대성공이야. 가끔 신나. 노래 부를까?
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
방금 어떻게 하신 거죠? 깜짝 놀랐어요. 있잖아. 사실 마법 소녀들은 항상 인력난에 시달리거든.
재밌겠는데?
너희만 괜찮다면 혹시 우리를
이거
도와줘.
공감했지?
아니야.
발레 브레이크
그래.
필요한
딱 반쯤 죽여버려.
내가 정할 수 있어.
13분 공약을 맞추려면 이게 세격이지.
발레 브레이크 슬램.
했구나. 나라도 그랬을 거야.
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
이거 공감했지?
방금 전에는 굉장했다고. 베르게 그 인간도 이걸 인정할걸?
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램. 상황이 끝나면 티피리트에게 방금 상황 녹화되어 있냐고 물어봐.
재밌겠는데?
이 정도면 엔젤라님에게 증명할 수 있어. 이 일에 복지 따위에 필요한 사람.
되겠냐고요. 이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램.
열라 열받죠? 이러면 아무것도 못해도 되겠냐고요.
발레 브레이크 슬램. 상황이 끝나면 티피리트에게 방금 상황 녹화되어 있냐고 물어봐. 이 정도면
재밌겠는데?
엔젤라님에게 증명할 수 있을 거야. 이 일에 복지 따위의 협력이 필요한 사람.
되겠냐고요. 이거 공감했지?
발레 브레이크 슬램. 징계팀 직원이라면 당연한 판단이긴 해. 잘했다는 자체는 생략하는 거야.
이거 공감했지?
대학교체에게 큰 피해를 준 것 같아. 기후팀의 직원다운 완벽한 공격이었어.
있는 힘껏 찔러놓고 웃겨놨지만 저것들은 언젠가 다시 재생하겠지.
We head into time killing time for the next floor where we find the Book of Vengeance, cigarette holder, Angel's Cut, and clear mirror calm water before making it to the boss against the Time Ripper. Time Ripper's not a difficult fight either, honestly. Like, he can be under the right circumstances, but it's like not these circumstances, let me just say that much. His biggest threat is and always will be his mini drones, because if you get unlucky with them using like the envy skill or the 3-coin pride skill, it's like they can actually end up stacking up quite a bit of bleed damage, and that is a killer if you let it get out of control. But it's like most of the time it's not that bad, because you can very easily just knock the Time Ripper into the second phase very quickly, and that automatically like cancels their skills, and then at that point you have like 3 attacks that can clash, and it's like the Time Ripper himself only uses 2 skills that you can clash against, and that leaves 1 skill open to clash against one of the drones. And you know, as long as one of the drones doesn't actually do anything, you'll never take too much bleed damage in this fight for it to be that bad. It certainly helps that like a single skill 3 is more than enough to just instantly stagger every single part of the Time Rippers. So that makes it so that on the subsequent turns, it's just we have more than enough skills to clash with everything and basically render this entire fight very easy, especially when the mini robots just instantly explode themselves. So yeah, easy fight.
엄청난 공격이었어. 정말 말한걸? 아무튼 슬램! 부위 하나가 끊어졌네요. 이제 좀 수월해지겠어. 바이올렛 브레이크 슬램! 대성공이야. 다른 신나. 노래 부를까? 아까 했던 공격 덕에 한결 수월해진 것 같아요. 좋네요. 바이올렛 브레이크 슬램! 방금 공격. 자! 다음에 다른 PC에게도 다시 해봐줄래? 오늘도 정말 멋진 활약이었어.
We head into Refraction Railway, Line 4, Section 3 for the next floor, where we find the Emergency Investigator badge, Lithograph, and Dust to Dust, before making it to the boss. Alright, the Envy Peccatulum. Finally, something that's actually somewhat challenging. It took long enough, say that much. Of course, I say challenging with a very big grain of salt, because they're really not that bad, honestly. Like, Section 4 is much more difficult because they have like a whole lot of extra sanity gain on that fight, so they just do more damage, you know? Because it's like a lot of the identities on this floor specifically, they have a lot of skills that just only have a single coin, and so they just don't do a whole lot of damage in the first place, right? So it's like, it's very easy to just tank a lot of the damage from the Peccatulum. I mean, even taking like a couple like ego attacks here and there is perfectly fine. Like, this fight is pretty simple. Like, of all of the Peccatulum fights, I would say this one is probably the easiest to beat without using egos. That's not to say you can't do the other ones without using egos, but it's like this one is definitely the easiest of them all. Really, the biggest threat is just Rabbit Heathcliff with his, you know, quick suppression, because if he gets high speed and also uses it at the same time, it's like he can very easily one-shot you. So as long as you just clash against him against turn 1, it's like this fight doesn't really do much, honestly.
방금 전에는 굉장했다고. 베르게 그 시간도 이건 인정할
Of
거야.
course, when you get like a single turn where 4 of them are using ego skills, it can be a little scary. Especially when one of those egos are,
효과적이네요.
it happens to be Wing Beat.
기억하는 게 좋겠어. 이거 건강 맞지?
And Wing Beat is one of the ones that you can't clash against.
방금 어떻게 하신 거죠? 깜짝
And you end up
놀랐어요.
losing a clash to Sun Shower, but it's like Sun Shower doesn't really do anything, so yeah, not that big of a deal. It is a fatal attack though, like Ishmael is fatal to slot damage, so it does do a lot of damage. And then Wing Beat. Could have very easily killed us if we got a little unlucky there. Like if she got like 2 or 3 more, maybe not even 2 or 3, just like 1 extra coin, and I think we might have died there, honestly. Because it's like Gregor then used his skill 1, which was a slot skill, which again we were fatal to. So yeah, I think if Wing Beat did hit like 1 extra coin there, we would have died. Unironically. So this fight was actually a lot closer than I initially thought it was. Of course, after that, it's just like nothing matters anymore. Everybody just dies. Because at this point now we have enough skills to actually activate Ishmael's counter skill to become her skill 3. Of course, we're not going to do it here because it's pointless, but yeah,
상체를 제압하는 건 우리만으로
we can do it now. And yeah, the win rate button doesn't like to use the skill 3s against the Dreaming Electric Sheep because it's like resistant to envy damage or whatever, but it's like it doesn't matter. It still does more damage, I think.
브레이크 슬램.
이거 건강 맞지?
제압객체에게 맞는 공격수단도 못 고르면서
Of course, the sheep is a really easy fight because he comes after the Peccatulum, and
건강 맞지?
being the second fight, he's always going to be easy.
아무튼 슬램.
이거 건강 맞지?
아무튼 슬램.
I do like the fact that like Ishmael has a unique voice line specifically for if she misses the 3rd coin on her skill 3. Like it's such a random conditional, you know, that the 3rd coin on the skill 3 needs to roll tails for her to say a different voice line. That's just so unbelievably specific that it's just like, why that coin in particular, you know?
이거 건강 맞지?
I mean, I kind of get why it's that coin. It's like,
이거 건강
it's because that's the coin that's like readying up the ultimate attack or whatever, so.
좋아. 이번에는 제대로
Because she misses it, she messes up the ultimate attack, and then she gets the unique voice line.
브레이크 슬램. 저희 직원들이 개체의 분위기를 포기했어요. 역시 미리미리하게 잘했죠? 앞당 패치 성공. 오늘도 정말 멋진 활약이었어.
We head into the evil defining for the next floor, where we find Singwin's Fragrance Descends, Malarka, Midwinter Nightmare, Lowest Star, Redstained Gossipium, Respite, and Lunar Memory, before making it to the boss against the Pequod Trio.
저 개체가 기세등등해 보여요.
재밌겠는데?
The Pequod Trio is another fight that would be very difficult if not for the fact that we have the Knight's Blessing, because yeah,
건강 맞지?
pure fatality that is no longer an issue.
칼날이 잘 드네요.
Makes the fight pretty easy if I'm being completely honest. And the fact that we have Lunar Memory now also makes it like 10 times easier as well. Because we can effectively guarantee the fact that we stagger Queequeg here. And that means that Ahab is vulnerable for the rest of the fight. And Ahab's really the only one that you care about. Like, you clash against these other guys because they do the most damage early, and, you know, attacking Ahab initially is kind of pointless. Because, like, even if you do attack Ahab on the first turn and manage to knock her into her second phase, it's like she still gets the protection from Queequeg on turn 3 no matter what. And if you do knock Ahab into her skill, into her, you know, her second phase before that happens, then Queequeg and Starbuck get buffed while she is protected. And it just makes her like 10 times more dangerous, so it's like, it's pointless to attack Ahab early. Unless you can guarantee, like, kill her on turn 3. Which again, because she's protected by Queequeg at that point, it's like, you're never going to be able to guarantee that. Even still, once you stagger Queequeg once, it's like Ahab is completely exposed, and the rest of the fight's very easy because you can just straight up kill her. So we head into the Infinite Procession for the next floor, where we find the Helterfly's Dream and the Guiding Gas Lamp before making it to the boss against the Bloodfiend Trio. And following up the Pequod Trio is the Bloodfiend Trio, obviously. This fight is 10 times easier than the Pequod Trio, if I'm being completely honest. Especially if we didn't have the Knight's Blessing, because they do a lot less pierce damage. It's like only the priest does pierce damage, so yeah, it's like if he was fatal, we might have gotten staggered there, but again, Lunar Memory just absolutely destroys them. So that, and also all of the Red Snake Gosipium actually does quite a bit of work too, because it just makes it so all of their self bleed becomes basically permanent. It's only really effective for the priest though, because he's the only one that really gains a whole lot of self bleed. But yeah, pretty easy fight. Not really challenging very much. I mean, you can see we literally killed the barber in like 2 hits, so yeah, the rest go down pretty quickly.
정보팀에서 준 자료와는 차이가 있지만 당황하지 말고 침착하게 대응하면 괜찮을 거예요, 관리자님.
이거 긴강 맞지? 바이올렛 브레이크 슬램!
칼날이 잘 드네요.
이거 긴강 맞지?
아마 그 공격이 약점이었겠죠?
바이올렛 브레이크 슬램!
좋아. 이번에는 제대로 들어가.
이따다가 유세를 이마코토
되겠냐고요.
자, 악당 대치 성공! 오늘도 정말 멋진 활약이었어.
We head into Refraction Railway, Line 5 for the next floor, where we find Phantom Pain, Charred Disc, Coveting Thorn, and the Charge Type Gloves, before making it to the boss against Section 2. Alright, Section 2. Definitely the hardest of the 3 sections, because you fight against the Peccatulum. I wanted to try and beat this fight without using E.G.Os, which is a lot harder than, like, the previous one, because this is on a late floor, right? It is on the last floor, and also we're a lot more fatal to these characters. So much so that it's like, yeah, we actually have to use the Emergency Investigator badge. The one and only time it's used in this entire run. But it's like, after that first turn, the rest of the fight's pretty easy, because, like, yeah, we just one-shot everybody, so it's like, nothing's really a threat anymore. Especially when we're at full health and constantly keep healing because of lithograph.
방금 전에는 굉장했다고.
Of course, it's like, this fight probably would have been a lot harder to beat without egos if it wasn't for the Knight's Blessing, because again, Pierce Fatality, like, it is a very big weakness, especially if you're fighting people with guns.
대성공이야. 칼은 신나. 노래 부를까? 와, 엄청난 공격이었어. 기념할 만한 걸. 방금 전에는 굉장했다고. 베르게 그 인간도 이건 인정할 걸?
재밌겠는데? 되겠냐고요. 몰라 열받죠? 이러면 아무것도 못하죠. 되겠냐고요.
있잖아. 사실
Wave 2 is against more Peccatulum, but it's like, these guys are not even a threat, because it's like, yeah, at this point we have skills, so we can actually clash. And because the Peccatulum's weakness is how low their health is, because we can just one-shot them all, it's like there is no challenge here at this point. The challenge was surviving the first turn, and because of the emergency investigator badge, that was the easiest thing in the world. So yeah, the rest of this fight is very easy. Even the final boss against the German gun guy, who I'm not gonna try to pronounce his name because I'm gonna butcher it. All around, pretty easy run, but it's like, what do you expect from the mirror dungeon? It's all mostly easy. Especially if you take the strongest ego gifts, which, I don't know, maybe I should stop doing that. It would make it more interesting.
상황이 끝나면 TP렉스에게 방금 상황 녹화되어 있냐고 물어봐.
재밌겠는데? 이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크
칼날이 잘 드네요. 아마 그 공격이 약점이었겠죠?
발렛 브레이크 슬램 이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크
슬램구나. 나라도 그랬을 거야.
이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크
그래,
슬램
딱 반쯤 죽여버려. 13조 2항에 맞추려면 이게 체격이지.
발렛 브레이크 슬램
완벽한 한방. 시원한 걸.
이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크 슬램
とても効果的でした.
재밌겠는데? 이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크 슬램
징계팀 직원이라면 당연한 판단이긴 해. 잘했다는 칭찬은 생략하는 게 좋지.
놀라요. 되겠냐고요.
아까 했던 공격 덕에 한결 수월해진 것 같아요. 좋네요.
재밌겠는데? 이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크 슬램
적합한 관리법이었어요. 다행히
이거 공감 맞지? 발렛 브레이크 슬램
방금의 공격. 역시
이거
그
공감 맞지?
자체였다.
발렛 브레이크 슬램
운명의 기운이 분명하는 것 같아. 그 공격을 선택한 건 좋았던 것 같네.
재밌겠는데? 발렛
좋아. 이번에는 제대로
있는
들어가.
힘껏 찔러놓고 으깨놨지만 저것들은
저기 해결사님들 너무 억울한 표정 짓지 마시죠. 당신들이 방심해서 진 게 아니라 제가 졸라 세서 이긴 거거든요. 이걸로 이번 월간 해결사들에 나온 주목해야 할 신진 해결사 사무소도 처리 끝났네.
And that's how I beat Mirror Dungeon 6 hard using only middle Ishmael. Like I said at the start, she's a pretty average middle identity who focuses mostly on reusing her skill 3 through her counter skill and getting a whole lot of power boost by simply taking hits. She's got decent bleed, decent burn, all around a pretty solid identity. Nothing to really complain about. Anyway, that's it for me. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one. And yeah, goodbye.